share it, and then, all right. So I'm
Sure.
recording it now. So for everybody who wasn't able to make the meeting tonight for whatever reason, um, I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about my idea for sort of the panel. Um, I've done a lot of panels, and one of the things that I like to do is sort of limit the range of the conversation because it can go all over the place. People most of the time are looking for, some really concise sort of advice. And I thought that when it comes to um, interviewing, um, it would be really helpful to sort of narrow the conversation. I had some ideas that I shared before, but just briefly, I feel like there are several different points in terms of that I wanted to kind of emphasize. And then I'd welcome you guys sort of chiming in if you think there's some other ideas, if you have a alternative. But one is the importance of research, about knowing your subject and what that looks like, um, and understanding, you know, um, if they've been interviewed before, you know, checking out as much of that content, and especially if it's someone who's interviewed a lot, knowing what questions to ask, because people really hate being asked the same question over and over again. If you're getting a really popular guest or famous guest, the last thing they want to hear is, well, how did you get into this business? You know, um,
Yep.
and then the second is about the importance of listening and the follow up. That for me is essential for sort of a good conversation. Um, those are like the two hearts, and I think we could have a just discussing those 2 points and discussing how we each approach it would be rich enough for the 45 minutes that we have. Uh,
Agreed.
so what were you thinking? Was there any points that you wanted to touch on?
I mean, to me, being a host and having conversational skills is kind of like an ongoing development thing. I think if we talked about listening, which is really fundamental, and then a little bit about research, I think you're right. We'll fill up 45 minutes because I know my perspective is probably a lot different than most others, and we just have a good range between that. Because otherwise, you just get too granular, and then people get lost, and
Yeah.
it sounds like it's too involved. It is, but those are some easy entryways that if they understood those fundamentals, they could at least get some forward momentum.
Yeah, and I think what would be really good is just to see how each of us approaches it, because every interviewer
Hmm.
is different. There's not one singular way to approach it. And I think I
Yeah.
found that when I finally found what was comfortable for me and
Hmm.
stopped trying to be, Tavis Smiley or or or
Yes.
anybody else, that it was easier for me to be able to do it. Because for me, um, I ask questions and I don't do a lot of sort of jumping in and interrupting
Hmm.
for the most part, unless I hear something where someone's taking a tangent and they're
Right.
talking about something that's really rich, and I go,
Right.
wait, let's go into that a little deeper.
Let's dive in.
But
Yeah.
otherwise, I just kind of let sort of people go because I find um, um, that if you're listening, they'll give you something, and then you can riff on that, because I don't work from a list of questions. I've done all
Right.
my research. I write some chicken scratch words on a piece of paper that I rarely refer to.
Right.
And if I've done all the work, I can jump in and we can just be engaged,
Right.
and it goes by really quick.
Yeah. I'm in a similar way in that one. Yeah, we could definitely exchange how we do it. I'm happy to talk about research a little bit about the interview process, like the listening part. So I do all of my own research. I find all my guests from Instagram or throughout the really the Black travel movement. I'm looking for men of color who travel. And what I'll do is I'll follow them and just stalk their page for a week, 2 weeks, maybe a month.
Oh, okay.
And what that allows me to do is see enough of their content to figure out where their headspace is. A lot of people travel, but not everybody actually has transformative experiences. There's a lot of um, flashiness in the travel scene. So I'm looking for like earnest individuals, and a lot of my guests
Oh,
have
wow.
never been on a podcast before. Not just because they're
Yeah.
men who travel. I mean,
Mhm.
I have some relatively well-known names, but white publications aren't interviewing them. no
Oh
matter
yeah.
what they've done.
Oh yeah. That was one
So
of the reasons why I started my podcast, because it was always the same people that were getting interviewed all the time, and mostly were white men. You know?
exactly, exactly. I'm in that space, and I'm also a subject matter expert in travel and what I do. A lot of my travels are more extensive than any of my guests. So when it comes to navigating the conversation, I'm very comfortable to take someone who has no experience and lead them along
Okay.
and make them feel comfortable. I also interview, we give out these passports, and I interview people who've won them. And so many times they'll say, Jerry, I have nothing to share. An hour goes by. I'm like, dude, you rocked it. So I
Yeah.
just try to make things as familial, but I learned that it starts at first contact. So the first time I send them a message, that sets the tone for how everything else is going to be. I do not write out any questions, nothing scripted. Everything is off the cuff. Again, I have a lot of
Mhm.
experience, but I'm also diving into things that mean something to them. And usually they walk away learning something about themselves that they weren't conscious of before we started talking.
Yeah, and that point about that, a lot of the people who are getting interviewed, the great majority of people that I interview,
Hmm.
are not used to being interviewed.
Right.
So there's a great degree of nervousness and insecurity
Yes.
about it. So it's like you have to do a certain degree of hand holding,
Hmm.
at least initially. Because
Yeah.
if you've done everything right, once you get into the conversation within 3 minutes, if they'll forget
Hmm.
that they're
Hmm.
talking into a microphone.
Yeah, it's
And,
that rapport building before, and even in my like, I do so one thing that makes my process a lot different is all of my recordings are remote since I started podcasting.
okay.
So it's a different intensity to your listening skills because you don't have any visual cues. We don't do any cameras, no Zoom, nothing like that. Everything's
Oh,
completely
okay.
blindfolded. So I'm talking to people I don't know. They don't know me. It's unscripted for an hour. We can't see each other. That developed my listening skills to a different degree where I never felt like I had a crutch, or was at a disadvantage because they weren't in person. So I kind of developed that way, and you really learn to give people space because if you miss something, it could be our connection, it could be that they got lost in thought, and I've gotten very comfortable with holding that space, letting my guests know that it's okay, and then moving right back to our next point of conversation.
Okay. Oh man, we could cover a lot of ground real quick.
Yeah.
This would be
Yeah.
good because I've not had really a chance to talk with other people about this particular aspect of doing it.
Hmm. This is the
Yeah, 'cause
sauce. This is more than half of my show is the fact that I'm hosting.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. So people, if you're hearing this, if you got any ideas or any comments, just feel free to send them to me. You can send it to my email at ibarianx at thecandidframe.com. You'll see it noted in the email that I sent you initially. Sorry that I didn't get a chance to catch up with all you guys, but maybe we can just dialogue over email, refine it. But from what I see here in this brief conversations, I think we could have a real rich conversation. I know that there's another panel that's on interviewing, but I
Okay.
think the more personal that we make this in terms of sharing
Hmm.
our experience rather than trying to pontificate and do all this wisdom, I think we can create a sort of a distinctive, panel for the people who attend. So
Yeah.
yeah, so thanks, and I'll talk to you guys later.
Oh, okay. I want to hear more about your